life. Whether you're ready or not, sometimes it's rough. And it takes all that you've got, but he's been here, just waiting for you to knock. So take his hand and plant your feet on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock.
Hi, welcome to Life on the Rock. Tonight we have two priests, Father Joe Fitzgerald and Father Marc Swartvagher. They did a biking trip all the way from St. Augustine, Florida to Rockville Center, New York to promote Vocations. They were with 3 seminarians. They stopped along the way and gave talks and catechesis, evangelized, prayed with people, stayed with families, stayed in churches, parishes, and just proclaimed the gospel and hopefully inspired, I'm sure, many vocations. They're going to tell us about their experience tonight. Good to see you, Doug.
You too, Father.
And we have a phoner tonight, Lou Judd. He's the director of Sports Leader. They're putting on a number of Rosary Rallies for young athletes across the country. Are you there, Lou?
Yes, Father. Thank you very much.
Tell us about the Rosary Rally. What happens at a Rosary Rally?
Well, Father, we did our first one last year here near Cincinnati, Ohio, and we invited all of the Catholic high school football teams that are about an hour and a half from Mount St. Mary's of the West Seminary. And the idea was to bring the young men together in their football jerseys, as many of the teams that could come as possible. And the idea was to give them an opportunity to pray together, pray for a safe season and sportsmanship, and hopefully teach them how to pray the Rosary and help them grow closer to our Blessed Mother and to Christ, putting their season in their hands. So we give a free Rosary and a free St. Sebastian prayer card to every participant. St. Sebastian is the patron saint of athletes. Have a short talk about the importance of prayer and the beauty of the Rosary and how to pray it. And then we have a priest expose the Blessed Sacrament. We pray the Rosary out loud all together and have benediction. Take a group photo and pray the St. Sebastian prayer all together, and basically that's it, and go home from there. So it's a very short event that's very easy to organize and put on. And from that one event, it's now spread. We have 19 and counting thus far.
And I think that's so powerful to have the adoration part of it. I saw a video of you all, and it's something to see these young men, the ones I noticed, like football players in jerseys and stuff, kneeling in prayer. It was very inspirational.
Yes, it is. A sports team is a wonderful kind of microcosm of the church. It's a group of like-minded individuals who love a particular interest. So bringing Christ and our Blessed Mother and prayer into that is a wonderful way to share and spread the faith and have the young men encounter God in that environment.
And what are some of the upcoming rallies? Where are they going to be located at?
Well, we have one July 19th in St. Louis. We have St. Louis, Louisville, 2 in Cincinnati, Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Bristol, Connecticut, Detroit, Michigan, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Little Rock, Arkansas, Atlanta, Georgia, Phoenix, Arizona. I hope I'm not forgetting any, but I think there's possibly one going to happen in Milwaukee as well. It just keeps growing, possibly the New Orleans area. So we pray that our hope and goal is that it's in every diocese within about 5 years.
Okay. And if people want to get more information about the rallies, where can they go?
They could go to our website, sportsleader.org. You could also email me. My email address is ljudd@sportsleader.org.
Hey, Lou, this is Doug Barry here. Hey, great to have you on the show. Question for you. Obviously, introducing the young people to the Rosary, critically important, of course, one of the most powerful Catholic devotions that we have. What deeper spiritual lessons are you hoping that they will gain from this introduction to the Rosary? For some, it's going to be maybe the first time they've ever had an opportunity to learn anything about it. But what are you hoping they will really take from this? What deeper, maybe theological lessons or school of thought are you hoping they'll gather from this?
Well, first and foremost, we're hoping that they will want to continue praying, especially maybe praying with their family. So at the end of every Rosary Rally, we're going to encourage the young men to consider praying maybe even a decade with their family before they go to bed at night, and then consider praying when they're maybe traveling to and from games, etc. So, of course, as we all know, prayer is the first step to growing deeper in our spiritual life. So hopefully they'll have an experience that prayer is okay. It's okay to be an athlete. It's okay to be a football player or any athlete and pray and love Christ and love our Blessed Mother and take all of that seriously and want to make that a more habitual, constant part of their life.
All right, well, thank you so much, Lou, for joining us. And that is Lou Judd, the Director of Sports Leader, talking about the Rosary Rallies for our young athletes across the country. So if you're near one of these locations, please join in. It'll be a great way to promote the faith. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with Biking for Vocations. Don't go away. Back in a moment. Hi, welcome back. Tonight we're talking about biking for vocations, and I have two athletic priests in good shape here, from Father Marc Swartvagher and Father Joe Fitzgerald. Welcome to the show.
Great to see you, Father Marc. Thank you.
And Father Joe, you are a vocation director for Rockville Center Diocese.
In New York, right?
In New York. And Father Marc, your parish is where?
Our Lady of Hope, Our Lady of Grace Parish, I'm sorry, in Howard Beach. I'm just the new pastor.
Right, so you just shifted to that responsibility. Yeah. So you all undertook a 1,400-mile biking trek with 3 seminarians.
Right.
Tell us about what inspired that.
It really came from one of the seminarians. His name is Stephen Rooney. He was just finished his first year at Douglaston, which was the minor seminary, finished first philosophy, and he did a trip from Providence, Rhode Island, to San Francisco, biking for affordable housing. And in his experience, there wasn't a real spiritual element. In fact, he didn't get to Mass every day. He did go every Sunday. He made that very clear. But on the journey, that was lacking for him, and especially when he got out into the Midwest and the West, there was such a lack of priests. It really affected him. So when he came back, he said, "Hey, Father Joe, Father Marc, we got to do something to really boost up the recognition, the understanding, get the word out there that we need to encourage people to at least take a look at the beautiful vocation of the priesthood." And so we started to discern where to go. And St. Augustine, Florida is, as it's called, the Sacred Acre, where the Catholic faith came to the continental United States 450 years ago. There's been a Mass celebrated on the altar down there for 450 years. And we started there, and we came up the East Coast. And in each diocese we went through, it was right around their time of ordination. And we finished at our ordination in Rockville Center and also Brooklyn. So it was just this whole conversation of vocations and ordination and encouraging for the priesthood and the consecrated life. And that's where it came from.
Celebrate at some of those ordinations? Or?
We did.
Yeah,
we did.
Oh, wow. And Father Marc, how did you get involved?
Well, for 13 years I've been the academic dean at our college seminary program, and Stephen, who was the one who had the experience last summer and came up with the idea, is one of our seminarians. And so when he presented the idea of having a more spiritual pilgrimage biking trip, I said, well, you know, I could maybe supply the masses and the spiritual support, not quite knowing exactly what I was signing on for.
But you did sign on pretty early, or was that took
pretty
some
early? Yes,
convincing?
yeah. I was most probably maybe the second person that was kind of on the team.
Right. So on the team, there's 5 members, 3 seminarians. You all wore shirts. What did the shirts say as you did this ride?
On the front of the shirt, obviously we wanted to honor the 3 dioceses, the Archdiocese of New York, Brooklyn, and Rockville Center. But on the back it said, it basically was from Matthew's Gospel, when Jesus put the Great Commission to go and make disciples of all nations. And that was really the whole idea, was to go into the local churches and to do that. It's not to go there and sit, like the Lord said, go and make. Very active and missionary, and that was the whole idea. I was able to contact the vocation directors throughout each of the dioceses, and we asked them, hey, we need a place to stay. We need dinner and breakfast, which was very helpful for that. A place to say Mass. And then in an ideal situation, we wanted to speak to the youth groups or the college Newman clubs, and it really worked out very well. I'd say probably 90 to 95% of the places we went to, we had that opportunity to engage and encounter those young folks. And I think more importantly, as much as we wanted to talk about, you know, biking for vocations to the priesthood and consecrated life, we really saw a better understanding of vocations in general, and that there's a call really for like a co-responsibility, that it's not going to be up to us to bring vocations into the world, but it comes from families and parishes and dioceses, and that's what the great response was. We saw amazing vocations to the married life. So many of the families that we encountered were just on fire, and they loved their priest, and we would sit at dinner tables and have that conversation. Hey, you know, are you thinking about it as a family?
Right. Now, Father Marc, you all would give talks oftentimes in parishes. What would be your element of the talk on the vocation talk? What would you tell them?
When we would speak about vocations, we would try and first bring to light that we all are called to holiness, that's kind of the primary vocation, that we all participate through our baptism, and that individuals are called in a special way to live that vocation of holiness specifically, and so that some are called and selected to be priests or give their lives in consecrated service to the church. But then, you know, often because of the hosts that we were with or the group that we were with, we would have an opportunity to talk about the other vocations of married life and family, and then also generous lay vocations. So it was really you know, we thought we were going to go in and talk just about priesthood and consecrated life, and we were going to give it to them, but they really gave us a lot by the exchange and the conversations that were there.
Yeah, I know Pope St. John Paul spoke about that in his document on the family, on marriage, about how they're mutually beneficial, help support one another, the call to marriage, call to religious life or priesthood, and how they witness to the gospel in different ways. But yeah, I've experienced that very much myself. You meet a strong family, and it's just an encouragement to our Christian life. And I love that theme, you know, to speak, you know, not just about a particular one call, but hey, we have a bigger call to serve God, to discern what He wants from us, you know, to seek to do His will. And that's an important awareness to bring out.
One of the things we would often kind of remind people as we were engaging them in conversation was that vocations don't fall out of trees or out of the sky. You know, they grow out of families.
Right, right. I have a priest friend, he always says that he doesn't pray for vocation, he prays for good families, right? Because they spark. But I want to talk a little bit more about the mechanics of the ride, because you all averaged 55 miles a day, and pretty much every day. You had one rest day over 28 days. You guys are in your priests are in your 40s. How did the old body do during all that?
Did okay until the last week.
It hurt. I mean, there was a few times. So we kind of recognized exactly that point, that we're not trying to, this is a pilgrimage, and it's not about pride, although that came in there a little bit.
You guys would race up the hill a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Trying to be those young whippersnappers, you know, those 20-year-old college kids. So it was tough. I'll just share one experience. My knee was bothering me after about 8 or 9 days, and we were coming into Raleigh, North Carolina, and I said, all right, I'm losing the pride. I'm going to put the bike in the van. And I said, we'll just come to this next hill. And we got to the next hill, and there was a roadblock, so the van had to go around. We come to the top of the roadblock, and there were cops there. And we're like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, well, it's the Iron Man. And we said, we have to get to Raleigh. He said, well, you can get on this road. It's 14 miles.
Well, explain to us what the Ironman.
So the Ironman is it's one of these races that involve biking or to swim. I think it's a 2.1 mile swim, a 109 mile bicycle ride, and a marathon. And they do that all in one day. We were just doing like 60 miles that day. So all of a sudden that knee didn't hurt anymore when I realized that these Ironman athletes were there, and I was able to finish those last 18 miles. Now, mind you, they smoked us, these professional athletes. But
Yeah,
it was,
we weren't trying to race them.
yeah, we weren't trying to, we were out finishing.
Yeah, but my question is, how many of those Ironman triathletes can actually cast demons out of a soul like you priests can? Who's the real Ironman? That's my question. Come on. There you go.
But it definitely beat up the body a little bit, and we had to be aware of that because, again, we're a little bit older. But I think the increment, we would say, let's get these 20 miles done. It was very, very spiritual in that sense. Like, we can do this much, and each day, if it would be a 90 mile a day or a 30 mile a day, we kind of broke it up in such a way, like, let's get to the lunch break, let's get to the break, and pray through it, pray in the rosary, and kind of pulling each other through. That was, I mean, that was really powerful about how we would rotate, and just
the lead biker.
Yeah.
To what do you call it? To
kind of
you can
draft.
off
Yeah,
of
to
them,
draft.
So. And I know, Father Marc, you talk about how pilgrimage and this fit a pilgrimage model is an image of the spiritual life. Talk about that.
Well, I think on a pilgrimage, you're on a journey. You're going from point A to point B. And you have a sense of what you need and what you need to bring. But as you go on a pilgrimage, often you get stripped away, or things get stripped away from you. On this pilgrimage, what we found was that we really didn't need as much as we thought we needed, especially to complete our mission of spreading the gospel. We went down with big duffel bags filled with clothes and stuff that we thought we needed, and a knapsack with computers and papers and books. By the second week, we were all down to a little kind of go bag where we had a change of clothes and just really what we needed to kind of go in, get ready for the next thing that we were doing. And all that other stuff kind of faded to the side. And so what I think a pilgrimage does is it refocuses your energies and maybe reminds us that it's not really about us, it's really about Christ, and Christ is on that journey with us.
And you all had the planned events of talking to whatever groups, but tell us about meeting people along the way. Any stories there, just like people by surprise?
Yeah, so there was a few times where, after the 15th day of peanut butter and jelly for lunch, we would say, hey, let's jump into like a Cracker Barrel or a Waffle House. And there was this one Sunday where we had a little bit of a break in time, and it was just when all the churches let out, and we got a seat, and this young lady, her name was Jess, she just had this just great joyful disposition, and other people that were working there were all kind of bummed out and like not so happy, and she was just joyful just to serve. We started engaging her in a conversation. Comes to find out that she was a single mom raising her son, just working really hard. And we asked her, hey, is there anything we can pray for? And her response was just that. Just ask the Lord that I can do better for my son, and that I can be a great mom. And it was just really, really powerful. And we prayed with her. And I mean, we think, hey, we're the religious guys, the seminarians and the priests. And yet it was this woman and so many others like that, so many amazing dedicated women of faith and men of faith who touched our hearts and just said, hey, this is so much bigger than like just this bike ride. It's about, again, making an encounter with Christ and talking about all vocations. And here she was working at Waffle House.
Right. Tell us about that call to prayer. I was touched by those stories. I've experienced that as a priest too. People ask me, pray for someone. I try to do it right then and there with them. But there's a hunger for prayer out there. Tell us about that, Father Marc.
Well, when we went into communities and met these individuals, you could see that they were hurting, or there was a need, or there was something that they were struggling with. And to be able to draw that out of them through a conversation or just willing to listen to their story, gave them hope. And I think by being able to pray with them there, like you said, and we did do that, but we also continued to pray for them and with them on the rest of the trip, and even continue to now. While we were biking, often we would say the Rosary, and we would kind of begin with intentions, who are we going to pray this Rosary for or this decade for, and often it would be the people that we encountered in the days before.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with Biking for Vocations. Don't go away, back in a moment. Welcome back. I know, Father Marc, you had some challenges on this ride.
I did.
What happened to you?
Well, I'm the oldest of the team and most probably the least in shape. I'm in pretty good shape. I generally run, and we did train to get ready for our pilgrimage. But about the beginning of the second week, we were on a pretty busy road, and it was pretty intense, and we were trying to cycle so that we would kind of help each other. And I had cycled from the front to the back, where you can kind of take a moment to take a rest, get a drink, and kind of recharge the batteries as you kind of move to the front. And there was a road hazard that had come up, and everybody kind of checked up. And usually when that happens, they say slowing, or but it happened kind of very quickly, and I ended up bumping the back tire of Father Joe's bike, which basically locked my tire, and then I flipped over. And so I had a nice road rash off the side of my back, and beat up my thumbs a little bit. So
like you broke your thumbnail and half?
Broke the thumbnail, gashed it, and kind of ripped some skin here and there.
And you had a few. I'm sorry.
Well, I was curious. Did it lead to altercation between you two? Was there any kind of animosity the rest of the trip? Took it along okay?
He couldn't hold the Eucharist, so I had to say no.
Any teasing him about this? The rest of the, where your glasses at? Can you drive?
I mean, actually, it showed for all of us. Like Father Marc recovered, and there was a few other times where he had some stumbles, and I'll say. I was really proud. I was really proud to watch. I mean, I think I would have kind of thrown in the towel. It was almost like watching Rocky, because he fell a couple more times, and he just kept getting back up and getting back up, and it was amazing. Seriously, one day he fell 3 times, and it was like seeing Jesus. And not to. I mean, he's a great rider. He just this was a bad day.
Yeah.
It was not to.
Yeah, that happened towards the end. The last week was tough. Just physically. And that was a long day.
That was a long day.
About 80 miles that day.
Yeah.
So.
Now, part of your message out there was that we all have a responsibility for vocations. Why was that an important theme for you?
Well, I think even as Father Marc said, we have this universal call to holiness, and that we all have a vocation, a gift to give back that God's given to us, and we have to return it in one way or another. But I think that so often you'll see in communities, people come up, or in a parish, hey, Father, you got to get us some priests. And as you know as well as I do, with the great gift that we have of celibacy, that's not going to happen. So priests come from families, and as we said, they don't drop out of the sky, they don't fall off trees, and so we all have a responsibility to pray for and encourage and even challenge people. When you're seeing a young man or a young woman seeing at daily mass or going to adoration, we all have a responsibility to say, I see something in you. You have what it takes, and I know you might be scared or fearful or saying like, there's something missing in my life, and what that is embracing the actual call that Jesus has for us, saying, this is it. I want you special. That I don't have you for someone else. It's just you and me, whether it be as the bride of Christ or as a priest to serve or as a religious. Like again, it's embracing that, and we all of us, every person in this church has a responsibility to recognize that, encourage, and I also like to say it, to challenge people. Oh, no, not me. I'm not this, that. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. So none of us are worthy to respond to that, but embrace what he's given to us and then share it back. I mean, even for this trip, my background has been a blessing in athletics. I didn't stop being an athlete. And I could use something like this bike ride to glorify God and encourage people to say, hey, priests do that, or religious do that. And that's what this is. All of us have a co-responsibility to do our part, to share our gift and say, hey, this could be for you too.
Right. And you all issued a challenge, a prayer challenge. Tell us about that, Father Marc.
Well, around the second week, the idea came that we really should try and invite others into the mission and into what we were doing. And so we sent out a challenge to friends, family, and then our bishops and others to do 40 minutes of exercise or prayer or both in prayerful solidarity with us for the intention of vocation. And the response was overwhelming. It just kept on, they kept on challenging others, and it went around the world. And
literally to the Vatican, right? You
correct,
had a,
yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, it got to the highest level of the Vatican. It was with Archbishop
Patron Wong, who is the Secretariat for Clergy and Seminarians.
Right.
And he received it, and we were kind of hoping he was going to challenge Pope Francis, but he kind of stayed on his level and asked his secretaries to do the same thing. And we heard, you know, in Australia and Ireland and England and Canada, those bishops, some of those bishops responded to it, their priests. So again, it was getting it out. Social media has just an incredible impact. It can be negative at times, but this was an opportunity for it to be really so positive.
So you have Archbishop Wong making a little video in support of this.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
It's very, very funny.
And your website has some great videos about the trip. You should check that out, experiences and testimonies and things. So.
Sure.
Tell us about the hospitality. That was clearly, I know we've had many groups on and people that are hiking or doing whatever kind of walks, and they all share about hospitality, how they are touched by that. Tell us what it did for you all.
Well, again, I think it's very biblical. Like the call of, like, you may be entertaining angels, and that we would come into places. Again, we went down there with nothing, with a sense that, all right, these vocation directors are going to help us, that the bishops, and they did wonderfully, and most often it was with families. And they invited us into their houses. They would make these big spreads of like lasagna and pasta, so we'd be all fired up and ready for the big ride. And then we'd be playing like ping pong or having a cold adult beverage for some of us, or a sweet tea in the South. And it was definitely that Southern hospitality, but it wasn't. It was like a Catholic. It was a powerful Christian hospitality that was radical, beyond what we expected. And like we became like part of their family. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it followed us the whole way from the south all the way up to the north until we got back home. You know, there were some instances where, you know, you're coming toward the end of the ride in the day and you're kind of struggling, and then you round the bend and there's a whole group of, you know, school children with cowbells kind of cheering you on and stuff like that. So, you know, just the welcomingness of that, and the willingness to put themselves there for us. It was really great.
And you, like, parts of North Carolina has hardly any Catholics. You met people that had never met a Catholic before.
Yeah, we stayed in Clinton, North Carolina, and there was a group of sisters there, the Sisters of Divine Providence, who received us, and it was an area that was mostly migrant workers. So they were the only Catholics, really almost the only Catholics in the whole town. So if they weren't, in some cases, Latinos, they were wondering, like, all right, you're Christian, you're Catholic, like, what is that? And again, we received hospitality from the community, but then when we would go out, whether it be to somewhere to eat, or even in some cases like at a gas station, people are like, you guys are Catholics? I'm sorry with the Southern accent there, it's like terrible. But like,
that's pretty good.
So like, what is that? You know, what is that? I've never met a Catholic before, and like, well, we're priests and guys studying to be priests, and just having that opportunity for, you know, just like new information for them. But it's evangelization. It's encountering Christ, and that's what it was. It was a time to teach them a little bit more about the Catholic faith. And
you tell a beautiful story about those two sisters, right? They were elderly and really working hard in the vineyard.
They were.
And they were encouraged by you.
Well, so these were two sisters of the Divine Providence, and they were blown away that we went to their town, to their parish, because in some ways there are certain parishes, there are certain parts of dioceses, like it or not, who are not close to the big city. And in some ways they're forgotten. And it was just an affirmation to them, to their hard work, to what was going on by the pastor and that community, that, hey, this Biking for Vocations thing, thought enough about us to come there. And again, they just treated us so unbelievably well. It was beautiful.
And in that community, they had a couple of young men and also women who were thinking of priesthood and religious life. So, you know, it kind of helped their mission of encouraging the Catholic faith and vocation.
I love that theme. Paul VI wrote about it on evangelization in the modern world, how the church herself needs to be evangelized. Right. And we all need encouragement. And sometimes we can forget our own, so to speak, in the church, and how powerful it is just to seek somebody out, give them personal attention, to say, to encourage them with the gospel, because it is good news.
Well,
It's a
Marc,
message of hope.
I think too, like with those sisters or other priests, the seminarians really did that. I think, like, you look and say, like, all right, I've done this for this many years, and I've given my life to the church, and then these young whippersnappers coming in, they're like on fire with the gospel and just so pumped up. And even for us, like that reinvigoration of prayer, like, oh, and God help me, like, oh, we're doing the office. No, we're praying it together, and it's just powerful, really powerful.
Yeah, every group's got their gift to give to the church. Everyone who belongs to the church has some gift, and I think young people certainly invigorate everybody with their generosity and enthusiasm. You all were also touched by the military families you encountered. Some of the hospitality was prearranged, some of it was just by chance, right?
Well,
Providence.
When we had contacted the vocation directors, we had asked them for breakfast and dinner. We would take care of lunch ourselves, and to provide a place for Mass and a lodging for ourselves. And often what we found was that it was the military families in the parish that kind of stepped up and offered that hospitality and that help. And just to be with them and to see their faith and how much the chaplains that they had encountered in their military influenced them and helped them and encouraged them in their vocation in family life was really phenomenal.
And the military families are especially good at that.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think for themselves too, because so often they're so transient. They would be reassigned to different parts of the country or the world, and there is that sense of, hey, let's bring people in, let them feel welcome, and especially having the connection as Catholics, as people of faith, and priests and seminarians. They were, I was overwhelmed. We stayed with a general. We stayed with one of the generals who served under President Bush. Number one, like we thought he was just this just nice guy, and then we start looking at these pictures of like with all these military, like all these big leaders, are like, this guy's he's big time. So.
Right. With some of the youth groups you met, you think that connected with them on the biking part, the athletic part? You talk about how this can be a vehicle to reach people. We have such a sports-centered culture that we can take the gospel there by doing things like this. And you found that true with the youth?
I did. I think kids are overwhelmed with, or wowed, I guess is a better word, by achievements, especially physical achievements. And we hold up so many of these sports figures, and here we come in on these, like they hear about the mileage, 1,400 miles, and you're on a bike, and even like with the little guys, like they see the bike, like, whoa, and it's like, well, it's just kind of a bike, but it,
I was impressed by some of the video, because you tell us the story behind the bikes. So you had some nice bikes.
We did. We had some. When we tried to invite more people into the mission, like who were way smarter than us, or who were better prepared. Like a coach we had a triathlete coach, a good buddy of ours, Jose Lopez, and he was like, I'm not going to just help you train, but I want in. And so he got us 4 of our 5 bikes, and one of them was like all donated. It was like $5,000, and everything was taken care of. Our apparel, anything that we could possibly need or want, rain gear, whatever, water bottles, different like Powerade and power bars. They all took care of all that kind of stuff, and it was all donated. So I think we were just kind of blown away by that. Right. And but these bikes were just impressive. Yeah. And people who knew were like, whoa, that's like the real deal right there. That's not like some little Pee Wee Herman bike or something. And it was awesome. It was really awesome. And I think they were overwhelmed, especially young people. Like, hey, that's epic, and that's the big term now. Like, that's an epic trek, an epic ride. Right. And they were kind of, and plus the 3 other seminarians, they're all in great shape, and they interacted well with the young folks, and I think that made a big. We did a 90-mile day one day in Georgia. It was about 100 degrees. We get off the bike, and those 3 knuckleheads were playing basketball at the schools, kicking soccer balls and footballs. Father Marc and I are like, water, we need a water break over here. And so
maybe it was a psychological intimidation.
Then it worked. It worked.
Well, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with our guest priests of Biking for Vocations. Don't go away, back in a moment. Welcome back. Let's talk a little bit about the vocation to the priesthood. I know, Father Joe, you have a great story. Tell us a little about your background and your call.
So I'm just, kind of a kid that grew up in New York, but I was always very athletic, and I played a sport. I played football and baseball in college at Ithaca College, but I also played a sport called European or team handball, which is kind of like soccer with your hands or water polo without the water. So you advance a ball about the size of a cantaloupe with dribbling and passing and throw it into a goal. It's been an Olympic sport since 1928, and I participated in the Olympics in 1996, and I also played professionally over in Europe and Sweden and traveled around the world. And really, I think that was the biggest impact for me. From 1993 to almost 2003, I was a part of the United States national team. I'm not going to say that like I was this big holy roller, I'm a cradle Catholic, but I always found myself like waking up on Sunday mornings, whether it be in like Iceland or the Czech Republic or Brazil, wherever it might be, and trying to find a church and going to Mass. And although I didn't understand necessarily the words that were being said, I knew the Mass. And so when the priest was elevating the host or the chalice, I knew what was going on there. And when people kind of reach across the aisle and they're doing that chant thing, they're saying the Our Father. And that always had a profound effect on me. And so when I came back and kind of slowed down from that life, I said, I got to get back. God's blessed me. I'm an Olympic athlete, and I got to get back to the community. So I went to my church, and I was involved with the Life Teen program, and was volunteering, and just kept hearing more and more, like God saying, like, and for me saying that's not enough. Volunteering, youth ministry, not enough. And I entered on my 30th birthday, 13 days before 9/11. So in 2001.
But you were living.
I was in Atlanta, Georgia, from 1993 till about 2000 with training and work and such. And then when I felt called to the priesthood, I moved back to New York because that's where my family was, and I felt most connected there. Although the Archdiocese of Atlanta and then the missionaries of La Salette tried real hard to get me down there, but I felt called to come back home, and that's where it was, and nurtured and loved, and it was hard. I mean, I was there during 9/11 and the beginning of the priest scandal, and I was scratching my head some day, like, what am I doing here? And yet, like, there was just grace. Like the Lord was saying, like, no, I have something in store for you. So when people say, I'm not qualified or I'm not smart enough, and I said all those things, like I listened through that, and like the Lord pierced me with, like, you're mine, like you have what it takes. And now I'm 8 years ordained. I'm the vocation director, so we're in trouble if they name me the vocation director in my diocese. In fact, I'd say Father Marc was my. He was at the seminary. I was one of his first classes, so I was doing pre-theology, and he taught me philosophy. So he had to change the grades a few times.
I just read a story too that there's been an increase in this country in vocations.
Almost 25%.
Since last year.
Yeah.
An increase of 25%. It's
incredible.
Astounding.
It's great.
I know, Father Marc, you've worked with vocations a lot. And what do you tell the young? I know an attraction for it is, you think of priesthood, you think of Mass and preaching and confession. What do you tell them about confession?
Well, confession is an important element of our spiritual lives. We need God's mercy, and I think we need to see ourselves as broken and weak before the Lord in order to allow His grace and His strength to work through us, and so with the young men, we encourage them to frequent confessions. They usually work that out with their spiritual director, but nonetheless, a habit and a rhythm of confession is important.
It is such a powerful message for today's world of mercy and forgiveness, and we're coming upon the Year for Mercy. December 8th, I think, begins. But we have a great Christophanic video on Oceans of Mercy, so we hope you enjoy this.
It's so easy to get inside your head and start thinking that your sins define who you are at your core. Maybe start thinking that they're bigger than the mercy of God, or if they make you unlovable, or that you're unredeemable. Revelations calls the devil the accuser of our brothers. He's the one who, after we sin and trip up, comes over to us and says, you see where you are on the ground? Yeah, don't get up, because that's who you are, and everybody else knows it. Maybe people in your life gossip about you, kind of help the devil do his job, right? Listen, maybe your sin is big, I don't know. Maybe you committed adultery and had somebody killed like King David. Maybe you prostituted yourself like St. Mary Magdalene. Maybe you murdered like Moses. Maybe you hunted Christians down to have them killed like St. Paul. You know what, though? I don't care what you've done. Next to the ocean of God's mercy, your sin, it's a pebble. St. Paul, who persecuted Christians, but then changed his life around, he said, anyone in Christ is a new creation. The old is gone. And he went on to pen most of the New Testament. I think God was inserting a little message in there for us. Yeah, me too. Listen, Jesus didn't die so he could receive your praise. We could always praise him. He didn't die so he could receive your good deeds. He died to take that pebble you're holding on to. And if you miss the whole you could start over again thing, you just missed the point of your faith. You certainly missed the point of Good Friday. Right, some people will hold on to the sins they committed in high school and don't bring them to confession until they're like 70 or 80. Don't let that be you. Jesus Christ died to set you free. Let him.
That's powerful. I know as a priest, hearing confessions is a place where you really see the power of the gospel, the power of God's grace working, and it's always such a rewarding work. But you know, preaching and offering the Mass certainly too, just very powerful experiences of God's grace and working in our lives. So just want to encourage our young people out there watching this show to ask God, you know, what's he calling you to? And to just reassure them that the priesthood, it's a beautiful and great vocation. You know, if you're called, I know that was so important in my life to get that from my grandfather. My father had passed away, but my grandfather, he just simply said it. He didn't have like a clericalism or just didn't exaggerate it or anything, but he just reassured me it's a good life. And that just went right into my heart. You know, I needed to hear that. But so Doug, you had a question for us?
Well, yeah, a couple things. Actually, first of all, there's a lot in our society right now, a lot in our world, that's really tearing at faith, religious freedoms, liberty and such. We're seeing these things unfold just recently with the Supreme Court decision in the U.S., with what Ireland has done, Mexico has done regarding so-called same-sex marriage. And it's putting priests in a more difficult situation in many respects. And there are a lot who are, the threats are coming down, possible jail time, possible fines and the persecutions, and it's coming in so many different ways. And anybody who doesn't see it clearly is not paying attention to the signs. This is upon us right now. So the men that step up to be priests do need to have a certain grit, a certain willingness to truly look at what the cross is about and lay your life down. But the I don't want to say public relations, but the interaction with people, like something like this biking trip did and does, is so critical, so important, because it does elevate in such a positive light, positive way, this down-to-earth wholesomeness of you men as priests. Where does it go from here, though? Because with everything going on in the world, we need more of this. We need hundreds of you priests riding bikes for thousands of miles every year. Don't you think it'd be a great idea?
I do.
That'd be wonderful.
But seriously, because we do need to elevate in the eyes and minds of the world the importance and beauty of the faith, and in particular the priesthood, and that wow, what can be done, to bring mercy, to bring Christ's grace to the world through the hands and the person of the priest. Where do you go from here? Do you do this next year? Do you try to multiply this with others? Are others showing interest, and how do you two feel about doing it again?
Yeah. I don't know if I'll be able to do it again just because of my new role as pastor.
Okay. Because we can get you in training 6 months before and get you ready.
That'd be good. But we did have conversations, what happens after we get home, what happens. And I think the idea of doing a similar 1,400-mile trek is possible, and I think Stephen and Dominic would be most probably on board for that. I don't know if you'd be on board for it, but
You're volunteering me, Father.
yeah. Well, you know,
We want to get this on tape right now, fathers. Okay.
But even
so you
if
can't back out of it.
But even if it's not a 1,400-mile, you know, the idea of having biking for vocations in your diocese and pick 5 or 10 parishes to bike to and raise awareness in your own community. It doesn't have to be us as a team that's doing it.
Sure.
It can be others now.
But just some form. Let it grow into some other form and some other.
And I think there's that hope that it does.
Right.
And I think we're praying in that direction for discernment of where it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Doug, if you would have asked me like a month ago when we finished, I would have said absolutely not. Like, I'm done. Like, I did my part. but since that time, like, I enjoyed it. I've seen the fruits of it. And then, as you said, like, where does it go? Like, we've been contacted by whether it be other seminarians or priests or people like, hey, even when we were on the trip, like, if I would have known this a little bit sooner, then we could have brought our seminarians to be a part of it. And you know, just like everybody gets caught up in their own little world. And I think it's reaching out, being you know, on my side, on our side, being a little bit more organized and inviting more people into the mission, and then figuring out exactly what that is. Is it St. Augustine back to New York, or is it east to west? Is it you know, finding, like, I think the whole sense of pilgrimage, which is pretty big in Europe, is not really a common theme for us here in the United States. And we have amazing places to go. Even in New York, we have like the North American Martyrs, and to go up there. You're right. We're in a culture and a society that's like anti-church, anti-priest, anti-faith. Well, we don't need like wishy-washy people.
Right.
We need fathers. We need men who are going to stand up and like die for their bride. And that's the kind of guys that we're calling out. We're saying, I'm going to ride a bike for 1,400 miles. That's what I'm doing. What are you doing? You know, parents, families, what are you doing to say yes to this faith? Because that's what we need. We need heroes. You know, you see these young people behind us. They're not just the future of the church. They're our now. And what are they seeing when it comes to a priest? What are they seeing when it comes to like fathers and husbands? Again, we were talking about this before. Like, you know, what did Adam say when Eve was being like coerced? He said nothing. Yeah. Well, we're done with that. Yeah. We're done with that as a society of silence when it comes to men to protect and love their bride. And that takes nothing against the amazing gift of woman and womanhood within our culture. Yeah. But guys, let's go. It's time for us to rise up. And that's what I see. I think driving 1,400 miles is hard. Father Marc fell. We were all hurting, like that kind of stuff. Yeah. We didn't stop. We didn't stop. We were relentless. And that's what Christ's love and mercy is, relentless.
And your purpose for doing it was not, you know, so you could feel great about your accomplishment. I mean, you can have that on the side there, you know, as a side dish, but the main thing was to draw attention, to really elevate to the people, to interact on that level. And you're right, enough with the bystander. We men can't be bystanders. We can't stand around and let the serpent do his dirty work and just point fingers later and say, hey, it's the woman you put here. You know, there has to be something where we men engage, aware of this fight, prepare for it, and engage in it. And this is a way that relates, it connects, it's athletic, but it's for a deeper purpose. And I just think the whole thing is a phenomenal idea.
And we just have a couple minutes. Can you all tell, well, a young man's watching this, feels called to the priesthood, what should he do? Some steps he can do.
I mean, I think first and foremost, you got to quiet your heart. You got to get in the scriptures. You got to get your face in front of the Blessed Sacrament, receive the Eucharist every day, and listen. And say, God, what do you have in store for me? And then if you feel like, all right, like I'm open to something, check in your diocese and start with your pastor and say, is there like a vocations retreat? Is there a come and see, an Operation Andrew? And that's when you're around, say, whoa, I'm not the only person doing this. There's 20 or 30 or 50 people, young men who are saying a possibility, maybe God's calling me to this. And then maybe do a retreat weekend, again, a come and see weekend. And that's how you can hear more clearly. That's how it happened for me. Right. Like I got away from the noise. And I think that's the biggest challenge. Our kids are constantly putting their face in these screens, and they're not engaging and hearing about Christ's powerful love for them.
I think also part of the message that we want to give to young people is that do not fear. St. John Paul the Great, when he came in his first apostolic visit, said that to the young people of my generation. And we need to make sure that this generation hears it. And that they don't fear, and that they do have the courage and the ability to become, you know, prophetic witnesses. And you know, from what we are seeing around the world, you know, we do need those prophetic witnesses.
Right. And our young people should be encouraged. This 25% increase in ordinations. It's a staggering number. That's a great sign of hope. So a lot of young men are doing it, entering into it, and trusting God's grace and guidance, and trusting the church to guide and form them into good and holy priests. But thank you so much
Thank you, Father
for
Marc.
joining us.
Appreciate
and,
it.
Thank you.
I look forward to hearing what's next for you guys. But together we can give a blessing. The Lord be with you.
With your spirit.
May our Heavenly Father shine His face upon you. May He give you His peace. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We'll see you next week on Life on the Rock.